Let's talk some big questions ahead of week 6. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Heath Cummings, and a lot going on today, Heath. I don't know if you've been following the football news, but kind of a busy day around the NFL, and specifically from a fantasy perspective. James Conner and Justin Jefferson were placed on the IR. I probably put those guys in reverse order of importance accidentally. And Devon Achane, I'm going to guess he's going to be following them. It feels very rare that we get the team is considering putting this player on IR reports and then they don't go on IR. So he hasn't been placed on IR, but he's got that knee injury. Sounds like he will. And the Dolphins have some flexibility here with Jeff Wilson Jr. coming off of IR this week. I would expect he's going to play, and it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation with him and Raheem Mostert. And Heath, this is not one of our big questions, but I'll just ask you here. How would you rank the Dolphins running backs if Jeff Wilson is active this week?
If Jeff Wilson's active, then I'd have Raheem Mostert as the top 12 running back and Jeff Wilson as the top 24 running back. I think that especially in this matchup against a Carolina team that's one of the worst in the NFL and maybe the worst in the NFL and terrible against the run to boot. I think both those guys would be easy starts. If Wilson's not active, Raheem Mostert's my number 2 running back.
The Dolphins have 15 touchdowns from their running backs this season, which I think is more than they had all of last season.
Almost certainly.
I think they only had like 12 or 13 last season. Yeah. So it's been a real change. And obviously Devon Achane's individual brilliance plays a big part in that because he's ripped off like 3 long touchdowns already. But yeah, it seems like a good situation. Another good situation. Austin Eckler's going to be back this week. He said he's 99.9% sure he's going to be back. They play on Monday. He practiced without limitations. On Tuesday, it's not an official practice. They'll make their first official practice on Thursday, but that's the good news, I guess. And let's move on to those big questions now. I've got 3, 1 for quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Sorry, tight end, although last week was actually a really good week for the tight end position. Finally, God knows we needed it. But let's talk about the quarterback position. And last week, I might have just phrased the question like this: is Joe Burrow just bad now? Mm-hmm. And now, a week later, the question is Joe Burrow just back now? What do you think? How are you ranking him for week 5 or week 6?
I think for the most part, he's back in your starting lineup. Mm-hmm. He's a top 12 quarterback for me. I don't have him ranked as high as I expected to. He's still behind Kirk Cousins. So he's in the top 10, top 12. If you went away to some other sort of streamer, you're almost certainly starting Burrow over whoever that was. But no, I'm not ready to say that he's back to the guy that I expected to throw for 4,500 yards and 30-plus touchdowns.
Yeah, I want to pull up a stat that Jacob Gibbs posted on Twitter on Tuesday afternoon because I thought it was enlightening. According to the Fantasy Points data suite, the number of targets that any player had that were deemed open or wide open. Number 2, Adam Thielen and Tyreek Hill tied with 8. Mm-hmm. Jamar Chase was open or wide open on 15 targets in week 5 with an average depth of target of 8.1. Adam Thielen and Tyreek Hill on their wide open targets were 3.4 and 4.1 yards down the field. So that just my hunch watching the highlights from that game. I didn't watch the whole thing, but my hunch was that this was more about Jamar Chase just being on another level last week than it was Joe Burrow being back to himself. Now he played better, looked more mobile, had a scramble for a first down. That was all nice to see, but I agree. He's not top 5 fantasy QB, Joe Burrow, at least in my eyes. Maybe after this week, he will be if he has another good game.
Kind of burying the lead that Adam Thielen is elite again.
I mean, you and I talk about this a lot because we have the projections versus rankings dichotomy, and he's the guy that I moved down about 12 spots in my rankings because based on the projections, he's a top 7 wide receiver for me in week 6.
I haven't adjusted yet, but I think he's in the 8th or 9th.
Yeah, it's a little scary, but they're throwing to him a ton right now. He looks really good. It's all underneath stuff. There's nothing down the field. I think it's partially a product of the dysfunction of this offense, but it might still be dysfunctional moving forward. So yeah, Adam Thielen looks really good. How are you projecting the running backs for the Colts in week 6 and beyond? Obviously, very different questions.
Yes. Beyond, I project Jonathan Taylor to be a top 12 running back rest of season and Zach Moss to have a few games where he matters as a flex.
Mm-hmm.
This week, I think, will be one of those games. I have Moss projected as a low-end number 2 running back or high-end flex. I have Taylor about 6 or 7 spots behind him. So think Moss in the 20 to 24 range, Taylor in the 27 to 30-ish type range.
Yeah, the funny thing is, last week I said you probably have to start Jonathan Taylor because he's the kind of guy who might only need one carry to be worth starting. And then it was Zach Moss who ripped off the 56-yard touchdown and did that and had a massive
He's been legitimately good this year.
Oh, he's been great.
Yes.
Jonathan Taylor's better, I think.
As soon as he's Jonathan Taylor again.
Yeah. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. And obviously, one of the fallouts from Justin Jefferson going on IR. And frankly, it's a little scary what we're hearing that he might not come back after 4 weeks. There's a chance he doesn't come back at all. If you listen to some of the reports, that's speculation for now. But what are your expectations for KJ Osborn? I've got Jordan Addison as a top 24 wide receiver for this week. I think he could just absolutely blow up moving forward. KJ Osborn, I'm a little more skeptical about. I know he's had some times when he's been useful, but Adam Thielen missed 4 games in 2021. KJ Osborn had 22 targets in those 4 games. Now, he averaged 11.4 PPR points because he had 3 touchdowns, but not a guy who has earned targets in the past. What are your expectations for him?
I think he's going to get 7 targets, and you're hoping he scores a touchdown. He's a low-end number 3 wide receiver. He's 3rd on the team for me in projected target share this week. He's probably the 5th best fantasy option on the team. But the Vikings are a high-volume offense, and they're facing the Bears. So I think he's a fine number 3 wide receiver to start. I was just writing about this. I think he's played 8 games over the last 2 years where he's seen at least 6 targets, and that's a pretty fair expectation. He's been over 12 in 5 of those. So you got a slightly better than 50-50 shot that he's a borderline number 2 wide receiver. And you got a slightly worse than 50-50 shot that he's not any good at all.
That sounds about right. He's wide receiver 37 for me for week 6. So right in that same range. I would prefer to be in a situation where I don't have to start him. But if I do, it's not the worst thing in the world. All right, that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow to talk start sit questions for week 6. We'll see you then.